Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thank you for listening to Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 24, and on this episode, I speak with Geof Kirby. I met Geof, but first of all, Geof has his own podcast with his brother. It's the NRDLY podcast, NRLDY. It can be found at nerdly.net as well, and on iTunes, of course. He does, with his brother, they do like video game reviews. They talk about movies and science fiction-y stuff and Comic-Con stuff. Super cool. So anyway, I met Geof because a while back I had posted on my Facebook page, hey, does anybody have any experiences with ghosts or demons or anything like that? I'd love to hear your story. And tons of people responded. I mean, man, there must have been 50 or 60 stories that I got from people. And they were from the super mellow, oh, things fell off the shelf, to full-on demon possession, haunted houses, things that go bump in the night. Wild and wacky stuff. I think out of all of the responses, only 2 people said no such thing as, and maybe there were more people that didn't believe in that stuff, but they didn't post. So I really don't have a good barometer for that. That being said, Geof reached out to me and said, I've got a story for you. And so we started talking, and I said, would you be on the podcast? And he said, yeah. And the rest, as they say, is history. So we talk about all sorts of things in this episode. We talk about Comic-Con, and we geek out on science fiction and all that kind of stuff. And it is my dream to go to Comic-Con someday. I will do that. And we talk about religion and God and angels and demons and devils and all sorts of things. But the main thing we talk about is the fact that when he was in his teens, he was possessed by a demon or two. And so he tells that story of being possessed by some interlopers that were not welcome, and the subsequent removal of those guys. Or I don't know if they're guys or girls. I guess they are what they are. It's a good question. I always think of angels as kind of feminine and demons as masculine, which I know is silly, but that's just sort of in my brain pan. I don't think there's a gender specific. So that being said, this conversation is really, really cool, fascinating. We talk about so much, and I really dug it. And I really appreciated the fact that Geof was willing to tell his story, because I'm sure it wasn't an easy conversation to have. Because, people hear stuff like that and they're like, what? I don't think so. But no judgment here. I was fully on board. So hopefully you are too. And as always, heyhumanpodcast.com has got links and information and such about this episode, as it does with every episode I post. And Instagram.com/heyhumanpodcast. I'm on Facebook.com/heyhumanpodcast. And of course, I am on iTunes under Hey Human. Would love for you to subscribe. Take a minute and review it if you like what you hear. It's so helpful. It helps, get the word out. iTunes, puts podcasts higher up in the search engines and stuff, the more they get rated and reviewed and shared and subscribed to. So all of that is wonderful. Okay, that's all the business. And thanks for listening. As always, I really appreciate it. Here we go. Episode 24, Hey Human Podcast. Geof Kirby.
Yo.
How's it going, man?
All right. Just
thanks for being
chilling
on
out.
Human.
Yeah, sure, of course.
And you have NRDLY podcast, and Geof,
I do.
He brought me a prize. I got a NRDLY t-shirt, which is a brilliant graphic. Did you design this?
I did, yeah. I do all the graphic work for NRDLY. So.
I love it. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
It's great.
That's a limited edition shirt. We're never going to make that design again. I've actually burned the design, so we're done with that one.
I'm very excited.
We're hopefully going to do some new merch in the fall, some hats and hoodies and that.
Do you find the merch does well?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah. As we grow, we've had more people, order shirts and stuff. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's very cool.
gives me something sweet and unique to wear when I'm out.
So tell the fine folks, what NRDLY is about. We'll promote NRDLY too.
Sweet. So NRDLY is it's a podcast and a website that my brother and I started, and it was really just born out of our passion for geek culture.
Yeah.
And nerd culture. I mean,
What does that mean exactly?
Well, I've been playing video games since I was 5 years old. Been reading comic books and manga, basically Japanese comic books.
Exactly I like the dirty ones.
Yeah.
I do.
Been there, done that.
I do. It's weird. Like watching porn, I always feel bad for the girls. But
when it's like hentai or something, you're like, oh, I mean, it's a tentacle, but it's kind of hot.
When an octopus is having sex with a girl, I don't feel bad at all.
Space robots, let's do this.
I know. I don't feel bad for cartoons. I feel bad for humans.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so.
But I've been reading comic books and manga. I'm a huge anime nerd. I was, picked on and whatnot in high school and in elementary and stuff. So that was always my escape. Yeah, and Dungeons and Dragons and just everything. And my brother's the same way, except he's more on the fantasy end of the spectrum. Tolkien. I mean, God, he's the big. We're trying to get Stephen Colbert to do a Tolkien nerd off with us because my brother would totally rape Colbert.
Yeah, he knows a lot.
Oh yeah, he's pretty huge. So, on the web, we originally started with just the idea of doing the podcast just like as a way to kind of share our geek passions, and didn't really expect anybody to listen to it, but it would have been fun, just to do. And so then I was like, well, I mean, if we're going to do this, we might as well throw a quick website together. It's like a landing page, for the podcast. And then we got the idea, hey, well, let's give people something else to look at on the website besides, oh, hey, it's a podcast episode. So then we started doing like geek news, like what all the exclusives coming out of Comic-Con and that kind of stuff.
That's
and that
so on my bucket list. That.
I know. We're dying to
so
go.
Bad.
I'm thinking maybe. So we just started year 2. We just had our 1 year anniversary
of NRDLY.
Of NRDLY. And I'm thinking maybe next year when we kick off year 3, we're going to try and get press badges to Comic-Con. And see what happens. So
please take me. I will cosplay the ass out of everything. I would enjoy that.
We'll need
so much.
an assistant.
I'm telling you right now. Get me there, and that's all. And I'm in. And I will. I'm 6'1" almost, and I have 5-inch thigh-high boots.
Nice.
I will full on dress the part.
Do it.
Do
it. We'll all cosplay.
Oh my god, that's like a dream come true for me.
But yeah, so the website just kind of grew into a many-headed beast. We have various columns. We have a film column in TV.
Yeah.
We have a video game column. We have a strictly anime column.
This is on the website.
On the website, yeah. And we have a full Star Wars section.
Did you and your brother do all of that?
We manage it. We've actually got some friends of ours that are volunteer writers, and.
Content people.
Yeah, they help us out with the content. But in the beginning, for like the first 3 months, it was just he and I.
Holy moly.
We, with our day jobs too, I mean, we were probably working about 60 hours, 80 hours a week.
I feel you, because I have a day job and I do 2 podcasts, plus a songwriter, plus an artist, painter. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it was a rough gig there for a while. Yeah. But we got friends and everybody seems to love it. And we're pretty impressed with our stats and our numbers on the site. We've had over 20,000 hits in a year with no marketing. Wow. Like, just pure sharing it on our Facebook, our personal Facebooks,
Sure.
And
I think it's a big topic. I mean, what you're talking about is humongous.
Oh, yeah. And it's hilarious because, it's really funny when we do certain shows. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so do you watch Game of Thrones?
I've never seen it.
Okay, well,
I want to read it first.
There was a huge episode that happened this season. It was like 4th episode in, I think, or 2nd. No, I'm not going to spoiler anything.
All right.
And so we did a podcast. For the entirety of Game of Thrones this year, we just did 10 straight weeks of Game of Thrones recap shows.
Wow. Okay.
And it was the 2nd or 3rd week, and it was episode 40, and because of one hashtag that we put on the post, we're still getting between 40 and 50 hits on that a day.
That's incredible.
And it's been 2 months.
What was the hashtag?
I can't say anything, otherwise it's going to spoil it.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, now I'm so curious.
I know, right?
You have to tell me off the air.
Just binge it. It's, it'll take you like 2 days.
Oh, you mean it'll spoil the show?
It'll spoil the show.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so busy at this point that I'm terrified to start watching it. That's really the only reason why I haven't, because I'm afraid that I will lose. It'll be like being abducted by aliens. That I will just lose
track of your life. Yeah, exactly. That's how it is with us every year.
And the books look so intriguing. I was like, I really want to read the books. Everyone's like, no, watch the show first and then read the books. I'm like,
I would read the books first and then
and I'm
do the
a huge I would consider that sci-fi. It's fantasy, I guess, but I'm a huge sci-fi fantasy. I love that stuff. So.
Oh yeah, same here. I mean, I'm
a big fan.
Those are pretty much the only books I read is sci-fi and fantasy.
Really?
Oh yeah, I don't really read anything else other than that.
Yeah, I grew up in a family. My mom's side of the family was big friends with Frank Herbert and Ursula Le Guin and like.
Wait, seriously?
They were family friends. Yeah, so I was engrossed in Vonda McIntyre, who wrote Dream Snake, and
one of the earliest science fiction novels I ever remember reading was Dune. The whole Dune series.
It's not so good.
Oh my
It's so good. I actually just reread it 2 years ago because
because
it's been so long.
Yeah, I haven't read Dune in years.
Every single one of these books stands up the test of time. Yep. Every single one. I just reread Ender's Game and Dune. Ender's Game. And still sobbing at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
And the people that went to see the movie, I'm like, please just read the book. The movie doesn't even.
It was good.
It was okay.
It was about as good as you're going to get.
The point of the freaking story.
I know.
So anyway.
Well, you got to draw people in, you know.
And I told everyone, you have to read Ursula Le Guin. You have to. And Vonda McIntyre is amazing. Yep. She won the Nebula. I mean, so I grew up in that culture.
Nice.
And I have 2 older brothers. I'm the baby, the oopsie baby. I was the accident.
Yeah,
so my brothers are way older than I am, and so they devoured all that stuff.
And you just kind of
and all those great covers of like the women with the huge tits on the dragons and stuff. So great.
The Frank Frazetta covers that he did for like Conan and all that.
Great, yeah. My brother had all those books, and of
did
course,
he really?
As I'm hitting puberty, I'm like, oh, what is this? I'm so confused right now.
I was there at one point as a 12-year-old male.
That's so funny.
So yeah, that's what Nerdly is. That's what we do. And
I was saying to you before we turned on the mics that I don't know a lot about video games. I honestly, I really. The last video game I probably played was Miss Pac-Man, and when I was growing up, it was I loved what was it called? The Q*bert game.
Yeah, Q*bert.
And the one with the bird is it Joust? What was the one?
No, that was.
It made that cool noise.
I can't
and they laid the
big
eggs. Oh,
I can't think of it. I know what you're talking about.
We'd walk down to the 7-Eleven and play those games. But I never got into the video game culture.
Like
just never.
Game Boy and Super Nintendo. I
did play a game that I never did it. I loved the game Myst.
Yes, Myst was fantastic.
I played that. And I really enjoyed those games where you had to figure out things like, pick up this rock because you might need it for this.
Yeah, like RPGs kind of.
I loved all that stuff because, I felt really engaged in it. But the Doom stuff and all that, like shooting, it makes me kind of dizzy, first of all.
See, I'm not good with the shooting games. I mean, they're fun. Yeah. I mean, I view them as kind of like a mindless escape, going to go see like a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get Braveheart out of it, but it's fun for a couple hours and kind of gets you out of the rut. But I'm a big RPG guy. Elder Scrolls, Legend of Zelda, all the Final Fantasy games. Yeah. I never really had friends growing up, so I was always a big single-player guy. Yeah. And my brother plays, like, Destiny and The Division, which are big, like, online games that you play with parties of people.
Yeah.
And
I did play
not that.
World of Warcraft with an ex. He got really into it, and he was literally, like, 12, 15-hour days.
Yeah,
he got obsessed with it.
That was me for about a month.
And so in order to ever have sex with him again, I had to play it with him. And so I would come down and like sit and play the game with him, and I'd be like, and I have a very good intuition or whatever, and especially I know this sounds weird, but when it comes to electronics or I can sense things, it's hard to explain. But so I would always know when he was about to be attacked. I'd be like, there's something coming. And then sure as hell, something would show up. He's like, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know, I just know. It's the only way I could ever sleep with him was to be able to keep him from getting killed. I'm like, all right, you have 5 minutes left.
Just kind of reach over and you're like, Well, this is a different version of Roadhead.
Exactly. Seriously. So I did play that game. And no, it was fun, but I felt like it took over his real life too much.
It did that to me for about a month, and that's when I was like, I can't do this.
It's addictive stuff.
I've got to actually make money to keep the internet on so I can play, but then I don't have time to play. You know?
My conspiracy theorist brain is always like, oh, the aliens are grooming us to fight the intergalactic what was that with the kid in the trailer park, and they put the video game in, and
not The Last Starfighter.
That's it,
The Last Starfighter.
That's it.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
That was such a great movie.
Last Starfighter.
No.
Lance Guest,
it was so
Robert
good.
Preston.
Yeah, he was
Catherine Mary Stewart. Okay, I gotta get off Google.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, that movie was fantastic. But anyway, so in my conspiracy theorist mind, which is only a conspiracy until they prove it true, and then they always prove it true. But that's what the aliens are just like. Keep giving them all these video games, and they're going to be able to fight the war that we're having up there that nobody knows about yet.
I mean, I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah. I'm ready
fight
for the
in an
aliens
intergalactic war. I mean, I'll get a desk job or a bridge job or something.
Yeah, I always joke that I keep waiting for the aliens to come back for me. That they drop me off and they're like, see ya.
Yeah, my wife and I are the same way.
Yeah, they've got to be coming back any time now. I mean, my God, we've hit critical mass as far as humans being
human stupidity.
And this planet is sort of at that point. But all right, so listen to Nerdly, because it is good. And what I was going to say
it's fun.
Is I don't really know anything about gaming culture, and yet I was still entertained by it, which I think says a lot about the podcast.
Well, I mean, it's my little brother and I, and our big aim was to kind of be like the property brothers of the geek world, So we hate on each other and pick on each other, and well, he picks on me, and I say I hate him a lot. And that's pretty much the extent of it.
It works.
But, I mean, it's a lot of fun. We enjoy it. We have a good time doing it. And, it's, it's kind of a dream come true.
That's amazing.
Get paid to play video games and read comic books all day and talk about them.
I think that's fantastic. I can't wait till I get to that level where
it's a good gig. Yeah. It's definitely a good gig. So
yeah. Well, so I posted on my Facebook wall about a month ago. I was curious. I just put a basic message saying, hey, has anybody had experiences with ghosts or any kind of extraordinary things? And my God, I must have had 200 posts of people.
Yeah, I followed that for a while.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a great thread. And people were just saying, I mean, just the best stories. And out of all the couple hundred posts, I think only two people said there's no such thing as ghosts. And I just laughed because I thought, wow, I wonder. And I respect everyone's opinion. I don't have a problem. I personally believe in that kind of stuff. But I just thought, wow, in this sea of, oh my God, this was my experience, this was my experience, this is my experience, this is my experience, there's this lone voice going, I don't believe. But anyway, so you had said, I have a heck of a story, but I'm not going to post it here. And so I reached out to you. We didn't know each other yet. And you said you have a great story. So it
is an interesting one, that's for sure.
Tell us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
that was our first setup, I guess.
I'm actually kind of nervous about this right now because this is the first time that outside of a couple of close friends and my family and my wife or whatever that I've ever talked about this in such a open public forum. So it's definitely going to be weird. So I may
you
fumble.
Want that Prosecco now?
I'm good. I got my tea and I've got hardcore vaping going on after this. So.
Nice. Is that what that thing is?
Yeah.
That's the biggest vapor thing I've ever seen.
It's like a hardcore one.
It's like a Tommy gun vape. What in the world?
So I run it at a very high wattage, and it heats up the juice, and I blow epic clouds. And it's the only thing that's kept me off cigarettes in 2 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was a 10-year smoker, and it's fantastic.
Really? Okay, well, good on you.
Yeah, I figured, hey, I had a kid, and I'm sick of changing my shirt and washing my hands and face every time I want to touch her. So I was like, yep, time to change.
Okay, there you go. All right, so your story. So first of all, how were you raised up? Were you raised up in religion or not?
Yeah, I was raised in a Christian home.
Okay.
But it was one of those, like, my mom's family's all Catholic. My dad's family was Assemblies of God. So I always felt like I was going to hell one way or another. It's like I was, I never really went to confession because, we hardly ever went to Mass. I only went a couple of times with my cousin and stuff. But I knew all the rites and rituals and practices and everything. Never went to confession, so I knew I was going to hell in the Catholic world. And there were so many things that I loved and enjoyed that were going to cause me to go to hell in the Assemblies of God, Methodist, whatever, all that world. So it was just kind of like this weird in-between for me growing up. I didn't really, I understood the whole concept of Jesus, and I understood the whole concept of God, and, all the, miracles and creation and all that kind of stuff, but it was just kind of like, okay, cool, And so growing up, I didn't have any friends. Until I turned about 20, 21, I could count on one hand the amount of friends I'd had in my entire life.
Sure.
And got picked on, beat up, when I hit high school, it was pushed downstairs and, that kind of stuff, your typical nerd shove in the locker kind of jazz, my dad traveled about 30 to 37 weeks a year on business, and my mom, there's a history of depression and anxiety and bipolar and stuff that runs in my mom's family, and she had it and had a bunch of life experiences that kind of aggravated that and made it more pronounced, and she never really got much help for it. And a lot of that would come out, towards me. I was an only child for about 9 years, and a lot of that would come out towards me a lot of the time. So I felt growing up, it's okay, I leave one hell to go to another, to then go back to that one hell, that other hell again, And
the living hell.
Yeah, exactly. And it took its toll, and about 14, maybe 15 is when I really started down kind of a dark path. We were always Christians, but there was never a whole lot of family practice and that kind of stuff. I had Bibles and and everything, and we went to church on Sundays, but it was, for me, kind of the darkness that was inside was taking more of a precedent, in kind of the back end.
You were more interested by it, you mean? Or what do you mean by that?
Well, it just, I was starting to get frustrated and angry, and I was letting that kind of take over, because of everything that was going on with me and other human beings. And I think I was about 15, maybe, when I first attempted suicide.
Okay.
And I started down the path of self-injury.
You mean cutting? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Cutting.
I want to sidestep because I've never met a cutter. I've never met anybody that actually said I'm sure I've met cutters. I'm sure there's lots of them. What is it about cutting that? Would it bring you a release?
Yeah. It's when you have an open wound, the way that your body tries to heal itself is it rushes blood to that area to help clot the wound so it can heal. And with that blood rush comes a rush of endorphins to kind of help numb the pain a little bit. And it's that endorphin rush. You get to, you mentally and emotionally and psychologically, you get to a point where you can't really feel anything anymore. You become so detached from a normal emotional spectrum.
Yeah.
It became a way for me to feel something. I felt like I was really dead inside, actually dead. And, and I tried to be physically dead too, quite a few times. I mean, I've got tattoos and a lot of them are actually there to cover up scars. And one of the first ones I got was a star on my wrist to cover up scars that doctor said would never fully heal. So I did that about 16. I was going to a Christian high school. I pulled myself out of the high school. I just told them, I was like, I can't stay here anymore. I can't be with these people anymore. All the teachers turned a blind eye to everything. Nobody helped me. # stupid Christians. And
hashtag stupid people.
I know.
I feel like what year was
It was a joke. It's about 2002, 2003.
I feel like there was a time frame where teachers, now they have to by law, else they're culpable. But there was a grand section of time where if they looked the other way because they didn't know what to do or they didn't feel they were supposed to step in or whatever.
Well, the high school that I had entered into, it was full of what they call lifers, and these kids went through the same elementary, the same middle, and the same high school
those
together.
Are the worst schools
and a lot of those kids would then go on to the same university together.
Yeah, so you feel like a total outsider.
Yeah, and I showed up in my sophomore year of high school, and and there were a couple other kids that started when I did, and we were all kind of outsiders, but none of us had any common interests, so we weren't even friends with each other. And like I would have somebody, I had somebody one time find out my AOL Instant Messenger handle, and he started sending me messages. What he didn't realize was that my computer was in the same room as my dad's, and we were, working on a project together in the same room, and this kid started sending me death threats and stuff, and I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna slit your throat, I know where you live, all that kind of stuff, and obviously my dad was sitting there, so he took care of it. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would happen to me, and
nice children.
And, yeah, exactly, right. And so all of that culminated into diving headfirst into depression, suicidal thoughts, self-injury. So I pulled myself out of the Christian school, and the following semester, it was right before summer break, and the following semester, my first of my senior year, went to local public school. And it was there that I actually made some friends with common interests. I ended up starting the anime club, and we would get together and play D&D and that kind of stuff. And some of those kids were into a lot of darker things. A couple of them were aspiring, practicing magicians, and that kind of stuff. And
not
so
your party game magician.
Like full on
stuff.
Rituals.
Yeah.
I was there for a couple of rituals where animals' blood was spilt and prayers were made, and I never took part in anything because there was always still that kind of that Christian part of me, that the Jesus part of me that was like, yeah, you should probably back off there, bro. So I but I was still super good friends with all these people, and it definitely rubbed off, and things were not getting better at home. And I just ended up making friends with a lot of the wrong people, and spiritually that sent me down a dark path. And finally I got to this point. I researched all the different religions, and I didn't find anything that was enticing to me, because I started thinking, okay, well, maybe Christianity is not my thing. Maybe Jesus is just not my bag. So let's research all this other stuff, and nothing really caught my interest, and so finally I just threw up a big fuck you to God and was like, what, I'm done, dude. I am done. I don't want any part of this. All Christianity has ever done was fuck me over. And I'm over it. Right. Completely. And that was the turning point for me, when it comes to a spiritual thing, where darkness started coming inside of me.
Dark thoughts,
dark emotions and feelings. My dad said that over a short period of time, he would notice that looked like my skin was getting very, taut, and there was a physical change and a physical transformation. I always had dark circles around my eyes, no matter how much sleep I got. And it got to the point where, so in our old house, my room was the attic of the house, and it was a converted attic. So, there were walls and everything, and I had, and it spanned the whole length of the house. So on one half, I had couches and a TV and that kind of stuff. And the other half, I had my beds and everything. And, so I would, when laying in my bed, I could see clear across to the other end. And it got to the point where every night I would see a tall shadow standing in the corner of the room across from me with red eyes, and it would just watch me all night long. And that went on for a couple of months, and then I started hearing voices in my head.
Were you scared of the being, or did you just sort of...
I was, but I wasn't at the same time. I mean, I didn't like it being there, you know?
Did it... But...
It was odd, and it was awkward. You know? It's like, something I don't think is
like,
entirely...
Dude, I can't find the remote control.
Yeah, I know. Just trying to watch some anime, bro. Where's the PlayStation controller? I'm being irreverent now.
No, right.
I make jokes because I'm nervous.
Yeah, that's what I do. You said that you had kind of said F you to God, and then you were, and you felt like you were bringing things in. I thought that was a really interesting use of words. You said I was bringing in these dark feelings externally, bringing in, and then there's suddenly this dude. Exactly.
There's this physical manifestation of that stuff. And it was a little bit later after that I started hearing voices in my head, and I got to the point where I could actually have conversations with this one particular voice in my head, and it was all right. I mean, it actually kind of helped me deal with some things, you know, to a point, and then.
But explain the voice, though. I mean, like.
It was just like, I mean, it would. I knew it was in my head, but it sounded like you and I having a conversation right here.
You said that he helped you with stuff.
Yeah, just like I would think to myself, like, oh, hey, I'm in this situation. I don't know what to do.
And there would be
it would actually answer, you know, and it got to the point where I could actually be like, hey, dude, what's up? And it would respond, and we would have conversations. Yeah. And after a while of that, it got to the point where I could physically feel something in my head. And I always used to say it was like a worm, you know, like I could feel something. Like if I put my hand to my forehead, I could feel the flesh raise as something moved around in my head. And that's when I knew things were not exactly okay.
Now, did you, because of your mother's having issues of mental illness, did you, like depression and stuff like that?
I was in counseling. I was in therapy. I was supposed to be on medication. I abused the medication because I really enjoyed abusing pills. You know, which is kind of why it's difficult for me to. I'm still in counseling. I'm still on, you know, medication to kind of help me, you know, get those emotions and chemicals balanced and in check, and
sure.
And you know, but it is difficult, like having to go to my doctor and saying, yeah, I have really bad anxiety, I really need something. Like, I know Xanax has worked for me in the past, and they're like, yeah, but you kind of abused Xanax for like 2 years. I'm like, damn it, guys, come on. Yeah. It was 12 years ago. Come on, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I was on medication. I abused it. I was on Ambien because I had really bad insomnia. I get like an hour of sleep a night, if that. Yeah. There were a couple of times where I went 2 or 3 days without any sleep at all.
That'll get you.
That was rough. I would see things that weren't there. You know, I would hallucinate. I was on Ambien, so I would take like 4 instead of half of 1, and read a sci-fi novel or a cyberpunk novel, and then walk around my room hallucinating that I was in the book.
Oh my God.
That was a fun experience.
I took Ambien once when I went to make a record in New York, and the doctor was like, oh, you've never taken this.
Yeah.
I was having this massive insomnia, which isn't good for singing. And so he said, just take half a pill to get to kind of, but if you act weird, go to bed, try and go to sleep. And I was like, okay. And I was rooming with my bass player, and I told her, I said, hey, Lizzie, if I'm going to take this Ambien, if I start acting strange, you know, kind of put me to bed or whatever. She's like, okay, cool. And I was reading an Us magazine or some shit, and the people, it was all Harry Potter. They're like waving at me and stuff.
Yes.
And I called to Lizzie and said,
totally
Lizzie,
had that.
come here, you gotta see this. Look, they're like waving and they're moving from frame to frame. She's like, yeah, time to go to bed.
Yeah, I've had that happen. Yeah. I've had that happen before many times. Things just got progressively worse and worse from there. Started doing drugs, but because of my mental state, I would my one and only acid trip because of my mental state was horrible. I was at this party I dropped, and I just sunk into the chair and watched everybody walk around with their flesh melting off.
That's fun. And
then I had a sea of flesh and blood at my feet. That was the last time I ever touched any kind of psychedelics. And, you know, it was your quintessential downward spiral, you know, drinking. I was 18, 19 years old.
Are your parents kind of going, what is going on?
They didn't know they didn't know half of it.
Okay.
They didn't. I mean, they knew I had problems.
Parents never know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they knew I had problems. And, you know, they knew I was taking medication. They knew, you know, but at the same time, I was working at a Christian ministry. Because, you know, because I kept a lot of how I felt about religion inside. And, you know, I mentioned this before we started working, that my dad's worked in radio for a long time. I've worked in radio now for about 15 years. And it was, I technically didn't graduate high school because of some weird tuition thing, and I couldn't go to college. So I was like, well, I got to get a job. And where my dad was working at the time, it was real easy for me to get in there because I was doing audio editing, and I was good at audio editing, so, you know, whatever. So all of that made working there really awkward for me. And, you know, I had some friends there, and they knew something was wrong, but they were very encouraging. They never pushed me. They were just there. They showed me the decent side of Christianity. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever seen that. So I, like, really latched on to some of these people. And you know, I mean, all the while I'm, you know, sitting there having panic attacks if I leave one of my razor blades at home. Like, I had names and personalities for all of them. I was borderline schizophrenia. You know, it was horrible. And finally, I just decided, I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I'm sick of this shit. And Jesus may not be it, but I can't keep living like this because I'm going to die, you know?
And you're like 19-ish?
Yeah, about 18, 19. I was like, I don't actually want to die. I just want to stop hurting, you know? And so I made the decision I was going to quit doing drugs and quit drinking. And I did. And I tried my absolute hardest to quit cutting. I, you know, from that point forward, from that decision forward, I never had another suicide attempt. And right around that time, I reconnected with an old girlfriend of mine. We started dating, and things were going pretty well. She was very encouraging to me. We met when we first moved to Nashville at church, you know. So, you know, her family was very religious, but after we kind of reconnected, she understood where I was and understood that I was trying to change, and was very encouraging for that. It was the first time anybody had ever been that way for me. Yeah. And so I latched onto her too.
Yeah, sure.
And so we dated for, you know, quite a while, and that was in, I think, 2005 was when that movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, came out.
Okay.
And I'd always stayed away from exorcism movies. Just, it was something, I mean, I'd seen The Exorcist when I was a kid, and I was like, yeah, that's a really great movie, but it didn't sit right with me.
It scared the shit out of everyone.
Yeah. You know, it didn't really scare me. It was, and I don't know, maybe that was a sign number one that there was something wrong with me. Because I just sat there, I was like, this is a pretty good movie. You know, it was a good horror flick, and
I always get scared by those kind of movies. I always say that I can see any slasher movie and find a humor in it, but when it comes to demonic possession or ghost movies, I freak out because to me that's real. Exactly,
and
that's a possibility. I don't think Mike Myers is going to pop out of a lake and slice me up. You know? But a demon, I mean, whatever. Not devil, but demon. I don't know.
So that Exorcism of Emily Rose movie, it intrigued me because it was made by Catholics. And, you know, I researched the story. It was essentially a true story, and I was kind of excited to see it. And, you know, I heard it was very fair. It wasn't, you know, shock and awe for the sake of that. You know, I mean, it obviously had to appeal to a mass audience, but, you know, I mean, it was very fair when it came to religion, and I really wanted to see it. So bought tickets. My girlfriend and I went to go see it, and about halfway through the movie, there's this scene where they're trying to do an exorcism on this girl, and she breaks out of the house, runs out to the barn, and there's, like, you know, your quintessential, you know, knives flying everywhere, crazy storm, whatever, that kind of jazz. And the priest runs out, and he's, like, commanding the demon to give it his name, and the demon says, "We are through the girl, we are Legion, and then goes through all of these different names. You know, I am the one that was with Cain. I am the one that was with Judas. I mean, it goes through all these different names. And the final one, the final name, it won't release. And so the priest is like, I command you in the name of Jesus Christ, give me your name. And it said Lucifer. And at that point, I was like, fuck this shit. So I tried to get up. And I felt a physical hand shove me back down into my seat and hold me there. Cool. And I was like, what the hell is happening right now? And so I watched the rest of the movie, and it really shook me. Like, it got to me. And I don't know what it was, but it's something about it really freaked me out. Especially that scene. So I went home, my girlfriend took me home, and she was really worried about me, and she called my dad and was like, hey, you may want to try and talk to him, because he's really freaked out by this. And so my dad came into the room. I'm like sitting there on the couch, like shaking, like I'm like physically, violently shaking. And so he came in, he's trying to talk to me, and I told him about that scene. And I'm like going through all the names that she said because they were burned into my brain. And when I hit the final one, I couldn't actually say Lucifer. Like, I physically could not say it. Like, my tongue would not move. And at that point, that's where the fun started. I flipped back down onto the couch involuntarily. Lost complete control of my body, and in my mind, it was as if I was in kind of how I described it as like if you're like in a high school auditorium, right? Mm-hmm. You've got the stage, and like in my mind, my consciousness was like, you know, walking down towards the stage, and there was this being on the stage, and when I couldn't make it out what it was, and when I got to the stage, I could tell it was the worm that was in my head. It was an actual honest to God demon. And I'm like, you know, come on, man. Like, seriously?
Are you aware at this point of the room?
No, I have zero awareness of the room. And I remember specifically being in my head, you know, viewing kind of this sequence, and he had a chair, and he drug it to the back towards the curtain of the stage where there were no spotlights, and commanded me to sit in the chair, and I sat in the chair, and then he pointed at the front of the stage and said, watch me perform. And the front of the stage was my body. And I lost complete control over my body, 100%. I couldn't move. I couldn't do I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. I was scared shitless. And what proceeded to happen was, you know, kind of your typical kind of exorcism thing, you know. There was, you know, I wasn't on the outside looking in. I couldn't actually see what was happening. I couldn't control a lot of it. I was stuck in my head, and there was a lot of it that I'm confused about still. I mean, even 11 years later, you know, I didn't know if I imagined certain things happening. I felt like I was levitating off the couch.
But your father was there.
Yeah, he was there, and, you know, he corroborates everything that I said. You know, like, I felt like I was levitating off the couch, and apparently I was a little bit at least, but I felt like I was higher than I was. Speaking in another language, I couldn't say anything spiritual, you know, either positive or negative. I'm trying to think of what else, man. It just, you know, there was at one point I do remember being on, I had flipped over on the couch, and I was on my stomach. My head was kind of turned, so like my ear was laying on the couch, and my arm was bent so far backwards that if I wasn't in that situation, it would have popped out of its socket. But it never did, you know. And
right now, it's your father at this point saying prayer over you?
Yeah, he's like, I mean, he's scared shitless out of his mind too, and he's like, well, I mean, this is my boy, I got to do something, you know. And so he's like, he's praying, he's, you know, we called a friend of ours who was an actual minister, And but a really cool dude. He's my dad's best friend, and so he came over, and he's kind of had experience with this stuff before. So he's he knows kind of the
rhetoric.
Yeah, and kind of what you need to do in a situation like that. And so he came over, and they're both praying over me and everything. And after I don't know how long, I mean, it could have been 30 minutes, it could have been 2 hours. I can't remember. It ended. But I knew it wasn't gone, and I knew it wasn't over. But the experience at that moment ended. And, so like we, after we all got calmed down and everything, we went to bed. The next morning, woke up. I thought about going to church, but then I was like, what, after the night I had, fuck that.
So at this point, though, are you you're going to bed in that room, the long room that has had
Well, no, this was downstairs in our family living room, and I just slept in the living room. I just slept on the floor.
Were you like, holy shit, somebody's in me? And
Yeah, exactly.
And then here's a question, too, about the movie theater. You said that this hand sort of pushed you around and held you. Do you think, looking back, that was an evil hand or a positive hand?
I think
saying, watch
specifically
this so you know
that
what's
was
going on to you.
Well, I think specifically that was God saying, okay, you know what? Enough is enough. Enough is enough. This is what's going to get you to the point that I need you to be at. As an individual. It's so weird.
The minute you said that about the hand, because when I've died twice. And,
fun.
Once by drowning and once on the surgical table. But at one point when I was about 13 or 14, the reason I'm bringing this up is because that's why I asked if you felt that was like a God hand or something. Because my brother and his friends and myself, we went hiking up in the mountains where I grew up on White Horse Mountain and big rock climbing, and we were climbing. And just free climbing, whatever. Yeah. And I'm a early teenager, like 13. And I slip. I'm pretty far up. And I start falling ass over end. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to die. And I mean, I was like, I'm going to die because I'm going to break my neck. And I was going fast. And then suddenly something turned me on my ass and pushed me. I mean, I felt the hand push me against and I just slid all the way down on my ass.
Damn.
But I felt that's why when you said that about the hand, I'm like, I've felt that hand before.
Yeah, it was strong. It was crazy. I've never experienced anything like that, in my life. Yeah. And either before or after, and it But don't you find that interesting when two people have never met before? It is very. And see, that to me is part of what helps me believe that all of this is legit. I mean, I obviously have other reasons to believe that all this kind of stuff is legit, but that to me is one of the big things. Is it's like, to me, it's when I look at all the different religions around the world, and everybody's like, the flood didn't happen. Well, how can every religion in the world have a flood story? Yeah, every single one.
And they're thousands of years apart.
But I mean, but at the same time, the fact remains. The principle is still there. It's like, something happened.
Something is going on.
I mean, you can't just have all these different cultures and peoples from across the planet, that have never even met each other,
people on my
have
Facebook
the
page.
Same, experience,
exactly.
and so. So that Sunday I decided I was going to skip church. Probably the worst decision ever, but in hindsight. But, I was tired. So we, part of what we did at our job was we had a show that we produced on Sunday night. So Sunday night we went to work, came home, and, my dad was like, okay, well, before we go to bed, I lived the entire day in fear. I was terrified of something like that happening to me again because I hated it. And so he was like, okay, before we go to bed, I'm going to pray over you. I'm going to anoint you with oil, sign of the cross. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll take all the help I can get at this point. And I don't know if this actually happened or not, but I felt it happen. The moment his oil-covered finger touched my forehead, it burned like fire, like somebody was branding me on my forehead. And he may have done the actual cross, but it felt like the satanic cross to me, upside down. Yeah. And I could feel that brand on on my head, and it burned, and I immediately went back into the same situation, flopped back down on the couch, and it was the same kind of thing, as the night before. But my dad had kind of had, he was like, okay, I know what to expect now. I have an idea of what we're going to deal with here. And so finally he was just like, you know what, I'm done. And he started commanding for the names, and realized that there were 3 demonic entities that were assigned to me. One that lived inside of me, one that was assigned to whatever property I was on at the time, whatever location I was at, and then one that lived in my room and was like kind of assigned over my possessions or whatever. And
the boss.
Yeah, well, the boss was inside me.
Oh, okay.
And
but there was like a sense of hierarchy there.
Yeah, there was definitely a sense of hierarchy, and he got 2 of the names out, and he said that when he got 2 of the actual names out, he felt something leave, because in the religious world, if you can get a demon's name, it's like you discovered their secret identity. It's like if people discovered Bruce Wayne was Batman, it's like, well, he couldn't be Batman anymore, and there's no anonymity there.
He's just a rich guy with toys.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no anonymity. There's no.
So why did they give up the name? Do you think?
Because
compelled?
Well, they're still bound by God. That's essentially it. I mean, they know the Bible forwards and backwards. They can quote the Bible just as much as somebody who's memorized it can quote it. And they are still bound by that ultimate power, and so, he couldn't get the last one's name, or if he did, I don't remember.
The one that's in your room.
Yeah, the one that was in my head.
In your head.
Yeah, and so finally he's tried another tactic. He was like, leave this body the way that you came in. And for years, 10 years, I would have horrible Charlie horses in my right leg. And horrible to the point where it would last for about 20 minutes and I would have problems walking. I would be limping for an hour afterwards. Felt like my leg was just absolutely on fire. I wanted to amputate it. It was so bad. And so I was like, leave the way you came. And at that point, I started feeling my throat start closing up. And it was trying to choke me. It was trying to kill me, suffocate me and kill me. And so my dad was then like, God, I command you to send me an angel, or I ask you to send an angel down here to remove this, mm-hmm. To command it to leave, my son's body. And at that point, I felt like time stopped and everything stopped around me. And I was still, kind of suffocating. I was still being choked, and I could feel it. It felt like just this big lump, writhing mass in my throat. And I actually, at that point, and this is where, if it wasn't already weird enough, this is where shit gets kind of really weird.
That it's not weird to me? How's that for weird?
Yeah, well, there you go. You're one of the first. I actually saw an angel appear over me. And
was it blue?
No, actually.
Okay.
Just kind of looked like a normal human, long hair. The armor, it was wearing armor.
God's warring angel.
And yeah, it was, my mom always used to tell me that Gabriel was my guardian angel when I was a kid, like, oh, Gabriel's your guardian angel. I never really put any stock in that. I was like, well, fuck ever. I don't know. Nobody's ever seen this shit, and but it was actually him. It was Gabriel. I knew. He never told me his name, but I knew that's who it was. Armor kind of looked like the elves' armor in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Mm-hmm. If you go and you watch the movie, except it was brighter. Mm-hmm. It was clean. Sword was some sort of a crystal You know, it was a translucent crystal sword with, you know, not really a scabbard on it. It was just, you know, just like a little holster and, you know, but no full scabbard. And he appeared before me, floated. He smiled at me, and I could tell it was his way of saying, I love you, I'm going to protect you, you know. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever felt that completely safe, you know, like ever in my life.
Yeah.
And so he wrapped his hands around my neck and started choking the thing out. And at that point, I could hear my dad again, like, I command you to leave the way that you came. I command you to leave the way that you came. And, you know.
So now you have a demon choking you from the inside.
And I have an angel, Gabriel, choking me from the outside, but he's trying to move it to where it came in. And I could, like, once it left my throat, I could move my head again. My head, my eyes, my mouth was under my own power.
Yeah.
And I could see this black writhing mass, you know, move throughout my body. And as it left a certain part of my body, I regained, you know, ability in that part. Tried to go out of my left leg, and that was obviously not the way that it came in, because it got stuck, and I felt like my leg was burning. And so then I saw it move back up my left leg, through my groin, then down into my right leg, and it moved out of my foot, and it was gone. It was the first time in my life I'd ever felt completely whole as a human being.
Wow.
And my dad said when it happened, oh, I'm leaving out one important part. Okay, so like when Gabriel appeared, I forgot about that. How could I forget about this? This is like the biggest thing.
It's okay.
Just got into I got into the physical aspect of the whole thing. I actually, for the first time in my life, heard God speak to me, and it wasn't just like this deep booming voice or anything. It was just it was kind of like having a father talk to his son. You know, it's like you're a little kid and your dad talks to you, and you know, it's just kind of like this comforting older voice. You know, and he spoke just normal, you know, and he was like, okay, here's the deal. Either you renounce me again and you'll be dead in 2 weeks, either by your hand or some other's hand, or you can trust me and have faith in me, and I'll save you. You'll be fine. You know, it's just there comes a, he was like there just comes a point.
You're at crossroads.
Exactly. He was giving me that option.
Because you renounced him out loud.
Yeah, like a couple years beforehand. Mm-hmm. And you know, so and I actually responded this way. I said, well, okay, God, I am accustomed to eating and breathing and kind of this whole existing thing, so I choose that. And that's when Gabriel appeared, and that's when, you know, that whole situation. So left out of my foot, I finally regained control of my entire body, and my dad said that he saw my physical appearance change, like physically change. And my skin got fuller, color came back. He could actually see color in my eyes again. My eyes weren't shrouded and hooded anymore. You know, he was like, you look full. Compared to how you look right now in this moment, he was like, you looked like a skeleton before. You know, you just were so just dead to everything, and now you actually look like you have life in you. And so from that point forward, you know, I mean, I went through kind of the typical, you know, like as a kid, you go to some youth group convention, you know, Choir the Fire or whatever, and you come back and you're all like, Cloud 9, yay God, and then like 3 weeks later you're like, fuck it, whatever. And so, I mean, I went through my Cloud 9 phase, it was like it was church every time it was open, and got rid of all my secular music, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then I kind of chilled out a little bit, and you know, I moved in with some guys. I made some friends at actually this, like, young adults, college-age kid, you know, just kind of get together. Had some friends of mine that went, and they invited me, and the guy who ran it was an artist manager for a couple of Christian hardcore bands. So, you know, I mean, it was really cool, you know, it was super chill, and I met some dudes there, and found out we had been to like the same 2 hardcore shows the week before and had seen each other, and so we became friends. I crashed at their apartment like 2 nights in a row and then just never left. And moved in with them, and I finally got friends, and I navigated my way around, Christianity and religion, and here I am about 10 years later, and I'm still trying to figure shit out, you know? I mean,
it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still super rough around the edges. I mean, I still say fuck all the time.
I don't think God cares about swearing.
No, yeah, that was something I had to come to terms with, was like, God doesn't care what music I listen to. He doesn't care what books I read. I mean, I think there are some books that, I gave up watching hentai and reading the dirty mangas. And, I think there are certain things that God's like, oh, okay, no, I do kind of care about that, dude. So, but, I mean, he doesn't care what books I read. He doesn't care what music I listen to, whether I have tattoos or piercings or,
ultimately, it's what's in your heart.
Yeah, it's how I use the life that's in my heart and in my soul that means more. And I've actually had closer relationships with atheists than I ever have, like, hardcore Christians, I've never belonged at church. I've never belonged in Bible study groups and all that kind of stuff. I do, and I've lived my life for about 7 years this way once I kind of got things figured out. I do the best that I can to leave individuals' lives better than when I met them.
Right.
And I don't do it from some motivation to convert people to Jesus, and shit like that. I do it because I care about humans.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to go through the same shit that I went through.
Do you think that the beings were with you longer than you thought they were with you?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, there are still times, I feel like I have something important I'm supposed to do while I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily like what people call their God-given calling, or, and I think that God can sit there and say to some people, look, this is what I've got for you to do. I want you to go and I want you to do this. I mean, he's done it throughout the whole Bible, and, but I don't think that's what this is. I think, I don't know. I have something I'm supposed to do, and because of that, and because of my past experience with the whole, what I affectionately call Exorcism Weekend 2005, I still want to make a T-shirt about that. I survived. Yeah. Sorry, sidetrack. I still see a tall, dark shadow with red eyes that will watch me sometimes from afar. But it's not physically allowed or metaphysically allowed on any piece of property that I'm on. It's always hovering right on the edge of the property line of where I'm at.
Waiting for you to change your mind?
Yeah, I think so, or just waiting to get me. And that's where I'm like, I'm supposed to do something important. Either my kids are supposed to do something important, I was supposed to have them, or I'm sitting here waiting on that situation to come up where I'm like, boom, this is it. This is why I'm alive at this moment in time. But until something like that happens and I recognize it, or even if I never recognize it at all, my goal is to just be a better human being than everyone else, including the majority of Christians.
Well, religion can really mess people up.
Yeah, it's the religious people, not the faith-driven people.
Yeah. Religion and faith are two. Yeah, as far as
they're two completely.
And what you
different
have
things.
in your heart, I don't think you have to go to a church to have Jesus in your heart. And I think that Jesus is the epitome of a loving being. Mm-hmm. He's the physical manifestation of an idea of love.
The concept of true, pure, unconditional love.
Yeah, so whether you look at Jesus as a real person who existed or a metaphor, either way, whichever, it's still, who wouldn't want to be that guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Who wouldn't want to be like that guy? So even if you're an atheist, which I'm not, but if I were, I don't have a problem with atheism at all. And
I mean, two of my best friends are complete another
Yeah,
100%
most of my
atheist,
family. Most of my family. But it's you can't deny the idea of that being, the Jesus, the Martin Luther Kings, the whatever. They're all flawed. Jesus apparently not flawed. But
I don't think he was, but
I'm talking about the Martin Luther King flawed. And the Gandhi flawed. I mean, these are not perfect human beings. They had their foibles, but they were as close to preaching the message of Jesus.
The actual message of Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, it's like I know people that follow the whole Joel Osteen, John Piper, prosperity gospel, whatever, that kind of shit. And
those people make me nervous. People that yell about the religion make me nervous.
I hate it. Yeah. And I don't say that often. And they're... I mean, I use language, and I'm like, oh, dude, that's some bullshit, whatever. But there are specific times where the actual definition of the word truly applies, and I use that word with every fiber of my heart, and that's this statement: I fucking hate it.
Yeah,
I do, because it. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it gets people a lot closer to God than they would ever be. No, they're spouting off a false version of Christianity. It's a self-help version of religion, and it's bullshit, because it's not going to do anything for anyone else.
Like at the end of the day,
that's the antithesis of what Jesus was trying to do. He was saying, don't do things for yourself. Do things for other people, and it will help you feel better.
Sure.
And that's...
And don't look at what the left hand is doing.
Since all that happened to me, that's how I try and live my life. And it's hard. I mean, there are still times where, I like my wife goes on a trip and I'm staying at our house alone, and there are times where I'll just lay there and I'm like, I should probably take another trazodone, because otherwise I'm just going to lay here terrified that something's going to happen again. You know what I mean? What's that?
Is that a sleeping?
Yeah. It's sleeping medication that works with my anti-anxiety stuff. Okay. It was a rough experience.
Yeah.
It still freaks me out. And I've seen possession movies since then, and they still don't bother me just as much as The Exorcist didn't bother me. It's just that I'm a big horror movie fan, and I like that stuff. But I have a lot more reverence for it now than I used to, and I'm not afraid, but I do fear it, because it's a higher power than I am. It lives on a different plane of existence than I do, and I don't have the same type of power that it does. And so I do fear it, but I fear it just as much as, I fear the power of, the angels, it's like they have more power than I do. And if I did something stupidly shitty, I could be taken out, by either side, and so at that point it's like, we always fear what we don't understand. We always fear what we don't know, and what we can't comprehend and grasp. And I think that's okay, but I still kind of have this little niggling in the back of my head or in the back of my heart sometimes where I'm like, not many people go through that. You obviously went through it for a reason.
Sure. And
you forever will have a target on your back. And it could happen at any time, and I try not to pay attention to that, because I'm like, well, I mean,
but you made it.
God can cover everything, and He protected me before, especially after I was like, yeah, cool, I want to live, save me, and He has protected me since, but it still is kind of a fear, that runs in my head.
Sure.
And the other fear too is there's so many Christians that don't believe in this shit, and they don't believe that there's a spiritual plane, that's separate from ours. It's it's essentially another dimension. They've basically all but proven string theory and the multiverse.
Absolutely.
And, I don't think, when people say, oh, heaven's up and hell's down, that's not what it is. It's just a different plane of existence. Yeah. And it was made to be separate. And I think that it will merge again. If you go back and you read Revelation, whatever, I think that those planes will merge.
Thinner all the time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Really getting thin. But see, for me, like, I don't. I've had my own little altercations. Nothing. I know. I feel like I am God. That God is of me. I am of God, and so, not from a religious standpoint, but from a being standpoint.
Yeah.
I know my heart is true. I know what I believe in. I know who I'm fighting for. I know which side I'm on. You know what I mean? And so that in and of itself feels like.
See, to me,
doesn't make me scared.
That is kind of in line, and you're going to freak out. I'm sure a lot of people are going to freak out when I say this, but I think it's Crowley's Thelema. Alistair's the Thelemite kind of mentality, where it's like do what thou wilt. That's the whole of the law. It basically taking care of yourself. And you don't need an external power. You are that power. And
an integrated being?
And in a way, you are your own God, and that kind of rolls in with like Ayn Rand and her concept that she propagated in like Anthem.
I don't know that I would call it though my own God. I feel like I am of God.
And see, and see that's where I was going to deviate from that kind of. I was bringing that up, and now. Moving into that, I think that there is a very small portion of that that's true. Because if you believe in creation, the creation story in the Bible, whatever, you believe in that, happened as it happened, as it says, or whatever. We were made in the image of God. We were His finest creation, His masterpiece, and we were made in His image. And He breathed into Adam the breath of life. When that happened, there was a part of God that transferred into us. So we are a part of God. I mean, that's what the soul is, I believe anyway. And at that point, we do have that power, and I think guys like Crowley have just taken that to like a whole nother level. It's like, well, let's go all the way to the extreme.
Mankind has been trying to figure out how to use absolute power for their benefit for a long time.
Exactly. Exactly. # Illuminati.
The Bible is a I minored in world religion in college, and I've always been fascinated by religion. And I grew up in a household that everything was talked about. All the major religions, all the minor, all the mythology, like everything. And so I feel very lucky about that. So my thing about it is that every person is right in that whatever they believe is true. There's nothing you could say, nothing I could say, nothing anyone else could say, and whether they're Team Luke or Team Darth, it is what it is, and nothing gets past.
The ultimate power,
and we are made of stars. We are made of the very fabric of existence.
Was it Neil deGrasse Tyson? We are made of star stuff. From Cosmos a couple years ago, which I love that series. I loved it.
Did you ever watch the original?
Oh yeah, Sagan. Carl Sagan.
He was my first crush.
I can see that.
Him and Spock. It was kind of a tie.
Spock,
yeah.
Rest in peace, Leonard.
Spock reminded me a lot of my dad, so. But it's a fascinating subject. It really is.
It is. I could sit here and talk about this shit all day long. Yeah. I love it.
I do too. And I'm very thankful that you talked about your experience.
Yeah. I mean, I follow this other podcast, this hardcore band that I grew up listening to called Emery. A couple of the guys started a podcast. They call it Bad Christian, and they drink and they curse, and they're like,
I hate that line.
It's like their idea is we're all bad Christians in need of a great savior, and so it's pretty cool, and they talk to hardcore bands. And last year's Halloween show, they actually had a former high warlock in the Satanic Church. LaVeyan Satanism, not the International Church of Satan.
I was going to say those are just people. Yeah, those are people who like to talk about religion.
Yeah, and he's not in that anymore. He's a Christian now. He's actually a youth pastor, which is hilarious. Kind of like to me, it's the same level of hilarity as Alice Cooper being a youth pastor. But his story, man, and it just. At the end of it, they were like, thanks, we really appreciate you being on the show. We really appreciate, you opening up. And he said, look, if there's any chance that what I went through and what the things that I've done and experienced could help someone else better understand themselves and their relationship to the spiritual world, I'll do whatever it takes to do that. And I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
If there's somebody out there that's confused about this stuff or that has experiences with this kind of stuff or whatever, you're
not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not fucking weird. You're not a creepy guy or creepy girl. You're not...
Or insane.
Yeah,
you're not... Be insane.
You're not insane.
Some maybe.
Some maybe, yeah. But if you feel like some of the things that I've, kind of related are happening to you or have happened to you or whatever, you're not crazy.
And this happens to a lot of people. So it seems to me, and it's getting talked about more and more, which is great. Because the more it's talked about, the more out there it gets, the more people will kind of figure out what's going on. But
find understanding.
I believe that we are made of this pure love from a loving place, and that we forget, and that's where all the bad crap goes down.
Yeah.
And that we spend our life trying to remember who we are.
Yeah.
Which is a child of God. For me, that's my...
And
God could be replaced by anything. It could be light, universe, whatever. Mm-hmm. Just the big, warm, fuzzy ball of goo in the sky or in the other plane or whatever.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
For me, it's very... I like to... I don't like to speak in absolutes because I think it alienates a lot of people. And I encourage the rhetoric from every angle because first of all, I find it intriguing and interesting, and I love a great conversation. And when I see the fact like you and I are talking, we come from different... I feel like we're talking about the same thing but differently. We're coming to the same...
different angles.
Yeah, but we're not yelling at each other. We're not getting mad, and that's the thing with religion that freaks me out. It's like, why is everybody yelling so loudly?
Exactly.
You just have a conversation, and you'll find that you're actually pretty similar.
Well, it's like... I've always said, I would find if I actually sat down with hardcore conservative, Christians, and I actually asked them questions about what they think should be done with, like, the poor and with, those who are less fortunate compared to those who have worked their butts off and gotten what they have and all that kind of stuff. I think they would tend to lean a little more towards the neutral zone where both conservative and liberal, it's the same thing with religion. I think if everybody sat down and just talked, didn't scream, didn't wave a gun or a knife at anybody, and kept the bombs at home, and we all just talked, I think we could all come to the same conclusions. Just from different angles.
I just wish people act a little bit more like Jesus, to be honest. So the bottom line is,
bam! That's it. That's what I hate about this world is that you get all these Christians and like nobody acts like Jesus. Nobody loves. Nobody accepts.
There's that
nobody.
Great, and I was trying to remember if I read this and it was an allegory or if it was actually somebody did this. But it was a story of a new pastor had come to town. And it was Sunday.
Oh, and he dressed up like a homeless guy.
Like a homeless guy, and he begged and and people just ignored him, and they were like, ew, gross, or whatever.
Yep.
And he's like, please help me. And then church started, and everyone's like, where's the minister? And then here comes the homeless guy, and he starts taking off his stuff, and it's the minister. And he's like, y'all, what the hell?
WTF, guys.
Yeah. And I think that's a great thing. It's you can talk about your religion, and I don't care what religion it is. You talk about your religion until you're blue in the face and how yours is the correct one. But if you're not acting with love in your heart, then I don't believe you are the religion you say you are, because you're full of crap.
Exactly. I mean,
every major religion and every minor religion, the major tenet, the golden rule, says the exact same thing. They just say it differently.
Yep.
And it always says, treat others the way you wish to be, with kindness, basically.
Yeah.
They all say the same thing. Yep. Every single one of them.
And see, that's where it is. I mean, if you believe in
things.
Christianity, you got the fall of man, and it's like, well, that's why we all suck as beings, But
then you see little children, and I can go both ways. Go to any kindergarten class and watch little kids fighting over their toys or whatever, because they're all ego. It's all ego-based. So if you go metaphor, once again, Lucifer being the ego, right? And God being your id, your you know, the loving wonder kind of person. It's also fascinating.
It is.
I love it.
I love the theology mixing with the psychology, mixing with the sociology. It's just, I sit here and talk about all that.
That's
shit
why I love Rob Bell. I love Rob Bell's podcast. I really
he's a pretty decent guy.
Yeah, I dig it.
You know, I actually enjoy listening to him more than anybody else in the religious world, just because he kind of understands that there's a way to be a Christian. And there's a way to help people without being an asshole, you know?
Amen.
And, you know, it's like everybody bashes on him for being in the whole Oprah camp or whatever, but it's like he's not spouting off a whole bunch of hippie shit. I mean he stays true to himself.
Yeah, he does.
And he stays true to what he actually believes. He does what Paul did, where he presents it in a way that the culture of the time will understand.
Yeah, I really dig him. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, if I met Lucifer on the street, if he looked pretty normal, like if he didn't scare me when I saw him or whatever, if I met Lucifer, I'd be like, dude, can we go get a cup of coffee? I have like a million questions. Do you know what I mean? And just like I would with Jesus or God or whatever, I would be like, I want to ask you some stuff. I'm not, you know, no, you can't come in. But, do you know what I mean? Because what a fascinating conversation. Anne Rice wrote a book called Memnoch the Devil.
Yep, I've read all of her.
God, that was such a good book.
Yeah,
I love that book.
Yeah, it was.
And it's fascinating stuff, man.
It is.
Thank you for being on the
show.
Thanks
for having me.
I really appreciate it.
You know, I hope people enjoy it, and if anybody wants to think I'm absolutely insane, you know what? There are times where I believe that I'm absolutely insane.
You know, it's the sane ones that think they're insane.
Exactly.
And it's the crazy people that think they're normal. So you've got that going for you.
Yeah, you know,
I don't think you're crazy at all.
Cool.
Not even
my wife doesn't think I'm crazy, or if she does, she hides it real well, and I appreciate the hiding.
And okay, so one more time, Geof's show is NRDLY podcast.
NRDLY. There's no E. You can just go to nerdly.net and you can find it.
And I'll put a link. So
sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy the t-shirt.
Oh my gosh, I love it.